This podcast contains detailed plot spoilers, adult language, and mature themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Tonight on a podcast of Rare Antiquities, we go north of the 48th parallel. That's right, the frozen tundra of Canada, for a story about whale blubber, dog sleds, and hockey. Lots and lots of hockey. I am your host, Geoff.
Je m'appelle Harry.
Atta boy, here we are.
We'll show those Americans who are the frogs, huh?
That actually sounded far too refined for Canadian French, but it's pretty good, man. So here we are. We're back. We're back in the saddle once again. It's been a little while since we've done this. How's it going over there?
It's good. Yeah, it's been too long. Missed it for sure. I've just been overly worked with real life and real work, so it's been kicking my ass too much these days. Probably had almost a couple strokes. I wasn't sure if it was work or if my brain just broke from The Last Jedi. So one of the two. So
yeah, it's probably a combination of factors there for you, especially. But fuck real life, fuck real work. Here you are doing the things that are most important, bitching about movies on the internet.
Yes, this is the salvation.
Yeah, that's right. It's what it's all for.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, tonight we are tackling the Canadian action comedy Bon Cop, Bad Cop, which was released back in 2006. So let's do some reminiscing as we do, Harry. And I want to add in a whole shorter segment as well after we do that. But why don't you take us back to 2006 and tell us what you remember about this film at the time.
I think my hockey idol Doug Gilmour retired around then, 05, 06. Or I think maybe earlier. I can't remember.
Sounds a little late for his retirement.
Maybe. I'm just wishing. He's still hanging on somewhere. So.
Yeah, he's still hanging on, white knuckles and gray hair.
No, with this movie, my wife and her family, they're all French Canadians, so I can't recall what year, if it was the same year or the year after or something along those lines, because I think 06, this feels like really early. You sure it's 06? Because I got married in 07.
Yeah, 06.
Shit. Yeah, I mean, I remember just watching it at their house. I think she had her siblings visiting, and then they had just either we watched it on demand or TV or somehow rented it.
They didn't have on demand in 2006.
So then maybe they rented it. I'm not sure. So that's quite possible, or it came on TV. That's what I remember. I remember watching it for the first time and being shocked I was amused with what the plot was about. So,
how did the French Canadian crowd take the largely bilingual, approach?
So they loved it. So they were laughing their asses off on it. So I didn't get some of the humor, but I think it comes down to the translation. Mm-hmm. I mean, I get all the stuff that's happening between, Ontario and Quebec and Toronto and Montreal and these kind of things, those kind of differences and rivalries, which I'm sure we'll dive into soon. But I think it was the literal, verbiage on French and slang that got them howling. So I think that's where some of the humor played off well for them. Whereas I was I'm just literally putting my palm over my head and it's like, woof. If you say so.
Yeah, regret's a strong word, but I think this would be an interesting film to experience if you were truly bilingual. I think that'd be neat, but I am not. So.
No, but I've picked up some French now that I've been married to my wife, and she's a French. Like her degree or education was in French to become a French teacher. But I've picked up some stuff, some verbiage, some slang, some understanding. So I was able to understand a lot more this time around. So
right, yeah.
Especially some of I think what amused her, because for the podcast, I watched it with her, and I think she was enjoying the French swearing more than anything else. So
yeah, there did seem to be a lot of French cursing, and we'll get into that as we go.
Tabarnak.
Yeah. What the fuck does that mean?
It's like fuck.
Okay.
It's one way of saying fuck in French, and then there's another adjective that they add to tabarnak that they say in the film. And, she's struggling to explain it, but it was like just means a bigger fuck. So essentially that's what it is. It's like bigger fuck.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Which is where some of the humor comes in, but part of the humor, well, we'll talk about it as we go. Yeah, just to reminisce a little bit, I remember this movie coming out, and I saw it theatrically, which,
interesting.
It didn't have a very large theatrical release outside of Quebec, so, it wasn't that easy to get to a theater to see it, but I did do so.
May I ask, just out of curiosity, because, it's a couple of reasons, is what prompted you to want to go see it, aside from, was it just the support, or did it actually look interesting to you from the any previews or trailers or reviews or anything like that? Because just the reputation that Canada has with their own films, it's not very good or interesting. Right. And, I'm not saying I'm degrading this film in any way, and I'm not saying that applies to this film. I'm just saying in general, the production quality and those kind of things are just not there, which is what I find mostly with, our local films. So what prompted you to want to see this one?
You know what? That's a really good question, because originally I thought that this had come out earlier, and I had seen it while working at a movie theater, as you and I used to do. But this came out several months after I had stopped working at the movie theater, so I don't have a fucking clue why I went to see this movie. I probably saw a trailer for it and thought it looked funny, and that's the only explanation I've got for you. And then just to kind of further what you were saying, which is the other thing I wanted to talk about, is, Canadian film and TV tends, let's face it, it's lacking. And this looked like a much higher production value film coming out of Canada that wasn't about the frozen tundra and whale blubber. So I thought, hey, that's different. Like, that's the only explanation I can think of, is that it looked like a more mainstream type of film coming out of Canada, which I was excited for. So
I think that's a fair point. But just in case we ever have any future listener for this podcast, Canada is not just about whale blubber. I have yet to see a whale.
Or blubber, from one of.
Well, there are people who look like blubber, or whales, but no, I've yet to see a whale. But it is a frozen tundra. So
it's cold.
It's cold. It is cold, but the summers are nice. They're good enough.
Yeah,
Could be hotter. Could be hotter, but
for the most part, summer is actually quite hot in Canada, and there is lots of hockey though. We do.
Well, so that trumps every other nation on the planet, right there.
Yeah,
so
it is the greatest sport, and I don't care what anybody says about anything, because it's true.
As I said, they should just go shoot themselves if they feel differently.
Yeah, that might be an extreme response to that, but it is the best. It is the best sport. So actually, one thing I did want to talk about a little bit, and we're going to be long-winded, so fuck it. A lot of countries that are the same size as Canada or smaller have a very strong tradition of films and television of high quality, good production value, fine acting and directing, cinematography and all of that. And it just doesn't exist to the same level here in Canada. And I was wondering if you had an opinion as to why that might be, and any other thoughts on that.
The only thing I can think of is just our close proximity to the U.S. is that all the big talent that would come out of Canada, they would either get educated down there because it's so close and easy access, or after they graduate from, university or some kind of dramatic school or anything like that, again, they would head straight to New York or LA and try and make it big. Versus it's easier to do that because the culture shock is not there. You're talking the same language. And if you wanted to go overseas, people do that. There's a trend in Bollywood right now where a lot of people who, they're the ugliest mofos you've ever seen in your life. What, a bunch of white dudes like these Tommy Wiseau's, he would make it big over there, right?
Oh, they'd eat him up over there, I'm sure.
Yeah, so those kind of guys go, if there's a trend now, if you can't make it here, you can go there if you're willing to learn part of the language. But I think that takes some more dedication, hard work, and you're a bit more alienated. But I think that would be my guess, is just that the talent just shuffles down south because of ease of access.
Yeah, I think it's probably a pretty simple explanation. If you're the top tier of talent and you can make more money in very close proximity, you're going to go do that in a very similar culture. If you're Ryan Reynolds and you can make $100 million in, south of the border as opposed to staying in Canada and not making anything for the same level of talent, you would just go ahead and do that. So,
but I'm going to challenge every Canadian actor or director or producer or writer on this show. You guys are fucking bums. Make something up here worthwhile for your country.
Yeah.
You made your money. Make something up here now.
Yeah, get it done, boys. Get it done.
So there's a challenge from a podcast of Rare Antiquities.
That's right. We know you're listening.
Yes. So Ryan Reynolds, get your ass moving. Hire Shatner to direct you, and let's make it happen.
Ryan Reynolds. No. Let's get James Cameron, Ryan Reynolds.
Well, see, James Cameron, there's an example. Why don't you make a great Canadian film?
Yeah, well, I mean, James Cameron movies have budgets in hundreds of millions of dollars. So that's the entire GDP of Canada right now would fund maybe half of a James Cameron movie.
That only partially funds the epic biopic of Doug Gilmour. So,
yeah. Well, we need the special effects to make him look good.
So there you go. Well, I'm waiting for the biopic of Shatner.
There should be. Yeah, why not? He can play himself. We can use some of that de-aging technology that Disney Marvel used to de-age Michael Douglas and Robert Downey Jr. That'd be terrific. I'd watch the shit out of that.
Well, actually, okay, let's take Shatner out of the picture. Who is and obviously anyone associated with Star Trek. Who is your most respected actor, male or female, or director or writer that ever came out of Hollywood? Who for you is our star? Who represents Canada? It's not just about today, but of all time. If you had to name one, give me one.
Yeah, so if I have to name one, or like just in entertainment, like film or TV is what you're going with, right?
Yeah, film or TV.
I guess without having the list in front of me, I'd probably go with James Cameron. The guy's done a lot, not just making some really awesome movies, which we can debate how good some of his latter stuff's been, but you could see his talent in his early stuff. Some of his innovations in technology. He's got to be the one, right?
I would agree. Just too bad he's a kind of a fucking asshole.
Yeah, he kind of comes off as a bit of a dick. Yeah.
But outside of that, I think my most respected person from the arts may be Christopher Plummer.
I was just going to say Christopher Plummer's Canadian, right? Yeah, I did Christopher Plummer, although you said no Star Trek, so...
Oh, that's true. Sorry. Yeah, no, that's my bad.
But that was a fucking terrific part.
Oh, yes.
In Star Trek 6. Holy shit, that was good. He is terrific, though.
He's everything. Yeah, he's
probably one of the top actors to come out of Canada, for sure.
I would think so. I'd put him right in the top 2 or 3 easy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right.
Well, let's
One last question before we jump in.
Yeah.
Sorry. I thought to flip the tables on you. Yeah. Outside of this movie, any other Canadian movie you can think of that you would recommend?
No. No, not at all.
No, so I have one for you. Have you ever seen, and I'm not sure if it's Canadian, but I think it is, Strange Brew?
It is Canadian, and yes, I have seen it, and I guess I would say yes with an asterisk, just because it is super retarded, but it is funny.
It's funny.
It is funny. Yeah. And all of the guys that came out of SCTV, look at all the talent that came out of SCTV.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Oh, holy shit. So, yeah, I haven't seen it in years. And I have a list of movies that I kind of maybe want to do on the podcast, and that was on my list. So maybe that'll come up. Now, TV shows, little different. There are a couple of Canadian TV shows that I like and would possibly recommend to the right audience.
All right. Name it.
Orphan Black is terrific.
Orphan Black. Okay, I've heard of it.
Yeah,
I think my wife enjoys watching it.
Yeah, it's quite good. And I don't know, I could say it's actually a good TV show, but I really enjoyed it. It's a Canadian production. It was Highlander, the TV show. It was actually a joint Canadian and French production. So they do a season in Canada, they go film a season in France, come back to Canada, and it, like I say, I wouldn't call it good, but it ran for many seasons and it provided me lots of entertainment. And Adrian Paul can do a split kick, not quite as Jean-Claude Van Damme, but number 2 in my book.
Well, I thought there could be only one.
Nice, good job. Yep. Yeah. Let's jump on into the synopsis and tackle this Canadian film. So, Bon Cop, Bad Cop. There's a body on the Quebec-Ontario border. No, like really on the border. Someone has lowered a corpse onto the sign demarcating the border, with one half on the Ontario side and the other on the Quebec side. This draws the attention of both provincial police forces. Detectives Martin Ward and David Bouchard have a little difference of opinion on jurisdiction. Neither one really wants the case. But after unceremoniously tearing the body in two, it seems these two unlikely partners are stuck in the shit together. The body is identified as one Benoit Brissette from Quebec, so naturally, Detective Ward is assigned to hang out with Bouchard for the duration of what's sure to be a hilarious investigation. At the morgue, a tattoo on the body shows the logo of a former Canadian hockey team that has since relocated to the United States. The tattoo was started while the victim was still alive, but finished after he was dead, meaning he was dead before he hit the border, probably dropped from a helicopter. So, the detectives run down the lead, and after some buddy cop driving hijinks, run down a helicopter pilot who was taking an unscheduled flight late the day before, right around the time that body turned up. They track him down to a local pub where Ward makes nice with the barmaid and Bouchard checks out the pool table. The pilot, Luc Terrien, is a big bad mofo of the French variety and it takes both cops to take him down. Without a proper police car to hold him, they stuff him in the trunk of Bouchard's car and, oh shit, he's late for his daughter's ballet recital. I guess due process is just going to have to wait in the trunk with Luke while they go watch a 10-year-old dance. In a surprising buddy cop movie twist, Dad is actually on time for the recital, which he's like super into, you guys, and Ward gets introduced to Bouchard's ex-wife, Susie. She invites Ward over to dinner with the family because they all still live together. I don't know why. Maybe it's a French thing. Back outside, Bouchard's car with their only suspect in the trunk is getting towed away. This could present some problems at the task force meeting. But before they can catch up, the car blows up, raining cheap rusted steel and charred body parts all around. Now they're really in some deep shit. Thankfully, filing paperwork after explosions outside elementary schools is super easy in Canada, and they can all sit down for a nice, relaxing dinner together. We get some of Ward's backstory, some of Bouchard's backstory. It's all really sweet. Hey, remember that murder suspect that totally blew up in the trunk of a police officer's car this afternoon? Next morning, Bouchard and Ward are waiting on a search warrant for Terrien's place. Turns out those are super hard to get in Canada. So instead of waiting for like 5 minutes to search the dead guy's house, seriously, he's not coming back anytime soon, Bouchard breaks a window and heads in. The place is a dump, of course, and the two split up. In the basement, Bouchard stumbles upon a large grow-op, and upstairs Ward finds a dead body. The dead body of one Michel Grossbutt, former owner of the Quebec Fleur-de-Lis Hockey Club, who sold that club to owners in Colorado, where the team won the league championship the very next year. In the basement, Bouchard trips a body trap, and the whole grow-op goes up in smoke. The two detectives escape the blazing building, but not before inhaling all of said smoke. Needless to say, when the two are chewed out by the French police chief, they are high AF, and that goes over like a bad plate of poutine. So, in true buddy cop fashion, they're both off the case. Ward goes home to Ontario, and Bouchard is left to file paperwork, get suspended, and sit through many hearings regarding his gross misconduct. Just kidding. None of that happens. This is Quebec, assholes. Fuck due process. It's not long before another body turns up in Ontario, this time the first female hockey agent. No one ever showed her how to properly lace up her skates, so she did it upside down and backwards, with the skate blade in her skull. Yikes, it's a mess. Ward is examining the scene, but his investigation is broken up by his old buddy Bouchard. Why is he here? Never mind, no time for that. Is this death connected? Sure is. She has a tattoo as well. She was the agent responsible for a certain superstar shunning the Canadian hockey team that drafted him in favor of an American squad. Obviously, that means she has to die. All of these tattoos are pointing in a certain direction. The killer is targeting people he thinks are responsible for selling Canadian hockey to the United States, and each tattoo is a clue as to his next victim, which in this case is the team owner who sold the greatest player in the world to Los Angeles. But by the time they track him down, it's too late, and the next clue leads them all the way to the top, to the commissioner of the league, the diminutive asshat, Harry Buttman. After a brief interlude for Bouchard to get super freaky with Ward's sister for some reason, the boys are back on the case. But this time, the killer has kidnapped Bouchard's daughter, so it's back to Quebec where it all started. The Bond cops take matters into their own hands and kidnap Buttman themselves to swap for Bouchard's daughter at, you guessed it, an old abandoned warehouse, where the killer is revealed to be just some fucking asshole who really likes hockey a lot. He's been pulling the strings the whole time. And oh, look, Luke Tarian's totally still alive, too. They all fight. Bouchard puts a bomb in the killer's pocket. He goes boom. And they save hockey for all future generations of Canadians. The end. All right, so there's your film, Harry. Bon Cop, Bad Cop. Initial thoughts?
Amusing. Yeah, but you have to really love the sport of hockey and understand what's transpired over the course of, I would assume, like prior to '06, the last decade of hockey, or even earlier, because of the sale of, sorry, was it Doug Gilmour who was sold? I can't recall. But
yeah, right.
Yeah, so
they actually paid money to take him off their hands.
We should get this movie should have been about Doug Risebrough getting offed. I mean, that would have been
man. Well, would have played well in Calgary, that's for sure.
That's true. No, but it's a good summary. It's just it plays on paper as though only people who would like hockey would get this movie and understand the sport and what's transpired. And I think that's one of the cruxes of the film.
Right, yeah. So as I said, the movie came out in August of 2006, and there was a season-ending lockout that wiped out the 2005-2006 hockey season. So there had been no hockey for more than a year by the time this movie was released in theaters. And prior to that, as you and I know, but to provide context for anybody who may not, there had been real concern prior to that Canadian teams were starting to lose their market and were moving to the United States, as it happened in two cases where Quebec and Winnipeg were sold to teams in the United States. So yeah, there was definitely some fear in the Canadian hockey market that this, was just a matter of time before most, if not all, the teams were going to be sold to the United States, which was never really a danger, but it felt that way.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not saying it's really relevant now because I really don't think there's a large chance, but our local professional hockey team, all those threats and politics that are happening now with the arena, it's kind of ironic. I don't know if that's one of the reasons you chose this movie, that you thought maybe it would be semi-relevant to what we're experiencing now, especially in Calgary.
Yeah, it actually had zero to do with that because I honestly forgot about the whole hockey storyline in this movie. I don't know how that's possible.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wow, that's
as
shocking.
I was watching it, I was like, oh, right. That's right. It was all about that. Because I remember the movie kind of in a different context. I remember it a lot for its bilingual humor and sort of being a Canadian movie that, is more action, a little more mainstream. So I remember all of that. And as I watched it and the hockey stuff came back, I'm like, oh, right. They're making all these stupid jokes about hockey. I mean, they're obviously talking about the NHL, but we're not using their, the real team names, obviously, for licensing purposes. So, no, it didn't have anything to do with it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I just remembered the whole thing about the plan was to kill Gary Bettman, or in this case, Buttman.
Yeah.
So.
And I think hopefully we can take a bit of an opportunity to talk a little hockey on the show tonight. The movie will give us that opportunity, but we'll come back to that in a little bit here. So,
well, I guess let's just start right off the top. Did the Flames play tonight?
No, they do not.
Oh, okay. So
they play tomorrow night.
I thought we could do a live play-by-play here.
Play-by-play, yeah.
As the game's going on.
Here's a play-by-play for the Flames games. The Flames peppered 50 shots on goal, and they fucking lost 5-2 again. Yeah, that's the Flames game play-by-play the last 5 games in a row.
Ah, yes. That's true.
They can shoot, but they cannot score, and they are a sieve in net. So...
I had a feeling Mike Smith wasn't... he's back, though, now, right?
He could be back tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But it doesn't matter because he can't score goals.
That's true.
So, it's a shame. Anyway. All right, well, let's kind of run in scene by scene here. So our film opens on a radio call-in show, and that sort of sets the stage for the hockey conflict that Canadian teams are being sold to the United States. Mr. Buttman is set up as the villain in Canada, for the hockey villain in Canada, if you will. We see the first victim get tortured, killed, basically, and then, we meet our two heroes, Martin Ward, who's the straight-laced Bond cop, ironing his pants in the kitchen. You can tell he's the by-the-book cop. And then we jump over the border to Quebec, where we meet Bouchard, who's our bad cop, and in a very typical fashion, sort of a gruff dude who, for some reason, kind of sort of still lives with his ex-wife. I don't know if there was some joke they were trying to get on there. Anyways, we get some backstory from those guys. So let's just pause there. Introduction to our two main characters, Harry, and the setup with the hockey conflict.
Well, the setup from the hockey conflict was, perked my interest again as I kind of partially forgot. Like, I remember in the end it was about Bettman, but then it just, gets you interested if you're a fan of the sport. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the jabs between Montreal and Toronto, because I think you were hearing kind of both sides of the fence between two different... I thought they were switching back and forth. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Geoff, between two different radios or something like that, like stations. Maybe not. But the one thing I do remember before I get into the protagonists is, are we going to talk about the scene where the guy dies at the hands of the villain?
Yes.
So this is this scene too, right?
Yeah.
So when the bad guy takes, we don't see him, he's wearing a goalie mask, and he, which is pretty cool. I like that goalie mask. That's one thing I guess I'll say right off the bat that hits you right away is the production design and the quality is, while I wouldn't say top notch in comparison to the best big budget Hollywood films, it is a large step forward for Canadian films. That's one thing I will take notice. I like the lighting. It's more modern, and I like some of the details. It feels like they put a lot of money behind it, and they've got some good camera work going on here. But when the villain takes his helmet off, and we don't see his face, but we see the victim, his first victim, see him. Correct me if I'm wrong, does he not, that guy, recognize him? Because he goes, I thought he said, I thought I helped you as best I could, or something he said like that.
That's right.
So I cannot recall, and I'm lost. How does this play into the movie? Like, how does this loser nobody know someone high up here in the NHL?
I mean, it doesn't play too much into the overall story, but if you'll recall, so the killer in this case. So we have two bad guys. We have the bad guy who's pulling the strings. We also have Luke Terrien, who's the one who's actually physically committing all of the murders. And he was drafted and played a few games for the Quebec team before he was busted.
Oh, that's right.
Dope, right?
That's
so
the guy with that's the tough guy or the pimp squeak?
Yes, the tough guy.
Oh, but that's the weird thing is that now this is misleading to me because the guy in the hockey mask didn't seem big.
Yeah, and this,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, in this scene, it doesn't really come off as big. And you're right. It is a little bit misleading, but I do believe that maybe we have an editing issue with the production here, but I believe that's what's happening here.
Maybe. Yeah. So that's one thing. So but I did enjoy that first scene. And the cops, I mean, I think we get to see the actor Colm Fiore. I think that's his name, right?
I actually did my best to look up the pronunciation of it's Colm Fiore.
Colm Fiore. That's probably correct. Yeah, I remember now. That's probably correct. I've seen him in other Canadian productions as well. And I think his first scenes, they were kind of with his family. Is that not right?
That's right.
And you see him in his son. I like those scenes. Yeah. I mean, he's trying to relate to his cool young son who wants nothing to do with him. And then I initially got really confused because I thought that was his wife and the mom of the son, but then it turns out to be his sister.
Right.
Yeah. The blonde. So that was kind of interesting. I was a little confused at the beginning. But I like those scenes. And then the scenes with Bouchard, I mean, same thing. You're just setting up the family. The interesting thing here is both, unlike, say, some of the other buddy cop, the stereotypical buddy cop movies, these guys seem, even though they have different personalities, we'll come to find, but they seem to be fairly stable, normal guys. Even though Bouchard's divorced, he's still in a close-knit family, seems fairly normal. He's close with his daughter. He's just getting, jabbering with her a little bit, and his ex-wife. Same thing with Ward. I mean, he just seems to have a normal son. He's a middle-aged man who can't relate to his teenage kid. Seems normal to me. So, but they're not depressed or alone or isolated or something weird like that, like a la Lethal Weapon or Cash or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I think that's a really good point. As you can see, they sort of play more off of their personality differences as opposed to, one guy's a real fucking mess and the other guy's super organized. You're right. Bouchard's definitely solid family man. Seems they're both divorced because they're cops. So I guess it makes sense, sort of knits together. So there's a little bit more authenticity there. Just to talk a little bit about.
I wonder if that's a Canadian thing, though.
Yeah, you know what? I think it might be a bit of a Canadian thing. Just
we're afraid to show that people can be, who wants to, think about eating a bullet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, whoa, it's not that, dude. Chill out. Yeah. Yeah, we're not quite as high strung for sure. So, but yeah, I'll throw a little trivia at this point here since we're talking about our principal actors there. So, Colin Feore is probably our most recognizable face in the film here. He is a workhorse as an actor, both north and south of the border. I mean, he's been in such Canadian classics such as Due South, Kung Fu, The Legend Continues. Dude was in Face Off.
Oh, that's right. He was one of the doctors.
He's one of the doctors. Yeah, he was in The West Wing, Boston Public, Pearl Harbor, Chicago, Battlestar Galactica, 24, House of Cards. I mean, and my favorite role of his in Chronicles of Riddick. The dude's just everywhere. I looked up his credits on IMDb. He has like 6 projects like currently in production or pre-production or post-production. Like, he's not slowing down. So he's everywhere. And it's one of those character actors that just never, this is probably the closest he's ever had to a leading role, but he's been that guy in that movie like 150 times. So I like him. I think he has a cool presence. Bouchard, played by Patrick Huard. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but who gives a fuck? Mostly French-Canadian productions. He's actually done a lot as well in Quebec, also as a writer and a director, but several credits there. But he's never really gone outside of Quebec there. But
Bollywood, man. There you go.
Yeah, I guess he could go to Bollywood, but
bring that French accent. You'll get hired.
The impression I get, and this is totally speculation just from doing a little bit of research and reading credits, things like that. English Canada has fuck all for film and TV. Quebec, French Canadians have more of a film and TV culture because of the language difference. They have stuff in French. Like they don't have stuff in French, so they have to make it themselves. So there's a bit more of a tradition there than there is in English-speaking Canada. But anyway.
No, it makes sense, actually.
Yeah. When I thought of it that way, I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. So the two head to the crime scene on the Ontario-Quebec border. We have a body delicately balanced on the sign that splits the two provinces. And I like their little interplay where, buddy cop movies where there's a jurisdiction issue and they're pissing over who takes the case. This one, they're both like, who doesn't take the case? Like, I don't want it. So I thought that was a fun little twist there. What do you think of the team up and like they get on the ladders and they go up and they're fumbling around the body and they end up tearing it in half? How did that play out for you?
I liked it. I thought it was not something that I howled in laughter, but I chuckled. I thought it was funny, and I was expecting a bit more blood, but that's okay. I mean, I guess he's been there for a while and it's probably drained out or something like that. But I liked it. I liked the symbolism, even though it was a little on the nose, but it's a buddy cop film, so I appreciate that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I thought it was a little too on the nose for me, but I did feel their chemistry together, which is the most important thing in a buddy cop film. So I thought that was pretty good. Actually, I also like their little interplay there where they're deciding who gets jurisdiction, where they have the arguments of, well, it's feet.
The ass, the ass is on your side or whatever it is. Yeah, I like that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was like if it's football, tennis, your feet over the line, you're out. And Ward says, okay, well, in the 100-yard dash, it's the head that, in horse racing, it's the head that breaks the line. So I thought it was kind of neat. I thought that was fun.
No, it's well-written dialogue there.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So they kind of go back and forth a little bit, and we end up in the office of the police chief in Quebec. We also have the captain from the Ontario Police Force in there as well, and they're talking. So I like this scene quite a bit as they're kind of explaining jurisdiction there, but the French captain keeps trying to translate what the other guy was saying. He's like, I understand English. It's fine. I thought that was a really funny scene. I love this French captain. He was hilarious.
Yes, I'm kind of lukewarm on him, but I'm wondering, because now this is just me going back to foreign films. Mm-hmm. And I have no experience watching other French films. I know in Asian films, I've seen some East Asian films, I've seen some Bollywood films, I've seen some other like Turkish films and stuff like that. There's always some kind of clown that is way over the top, kind of like a Harry Mudd on steroids kind of thing. And he's kind of like a jester. And he's way over the top, and it's on purpose to make people laugh. Because there's that group in that culture that gravitates towards that, and they really enjoy that joyous, joyful, bombastic performance. And I'm wondering if this guy was meant for that audience. because I don't gravitate towards people who are like that, with the exception of Shatner, because I think he does it with such a fine art that this guy's just, without any skill. He's just kind of giddy. You know what I'm reaching at here?
Yeah, no, I definitely understand what you're saying. There are those characters in foreign films, right, that we're not that familiar with in Western films that are very over the top.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying Western films don't have that. You'll have people who will play it up in certain movies, of course, but they're terrible movies and those are terrible performances. So I'm wondering here, it's hard for me to judge if this guy's purposely done this way, which I think it is, to appease those people in the audience who want to see this.
Yeah. No, he's definitely done on purpose this way, for sure, yeah. But is the question, is this a trope of French-Canadian films? Like, is that what that audience wants to see? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's the little note I made in my head, and because I'm wondering if it's not that way, then isn't this kind of, how should I say it, prejudiced? Because it's very stereotypical, like you're perpetuating a stereotype, in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, good. That's a good question. I mean, it's made by it's a French-Canadian movie. Like, it's a French-Canadian production, so I don't know that I could say it's...
Well, because the Ontario guy, he's subdued, he's just there, he's calm, he's rational, and you'll see it with this guy, and also later, he's a police chief, and he's just wacky, and I'm assuming it's played for laughs on purpose, so you're not supposed to take this guy seriously. It's just that I don't enjoy that kind of humor, so for me, it's hard to latch onto a character like that.
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. He is very over the top, but I got laughs out of this guy. I thought he was funny, and this is a good scene for me. But,
I mean, I would only enjoy it if it was Jar Binks in the role. Then I'm all over it.
As usual, as usual, right? Yeah, pretty sure. Yeah, that's right. I mean, Jar, well, I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, we'll move on. Okay, so let's move on to the autopsy. So they've identified the body of some lawyer, and he had joined this law firm. I believe they kind of put together that he was one of the lawyers who would kind of help facilitate the sale of the Quebec team to the States, but they didn't really get into that too much. But they go to the morgue and they meet the coroner, French coroner, and they have some interplay here. So this is where they discover some crucial clues. The tattoo in particular, so of the logo for the fleur-de-lis, but it was apparently done part while he was alive, part while he was dead, so there's some clues there, and the coroner is suggesting that he was probably dropped out of a helicopter in order to get on top of the sign like that. So again, I don't want to stop too quickly here, but I think this is an important scene both from a plot perspective and thematically for the film here. So let's talk a little bit both about the plot revelations here, but I think this is one of the keystone scenes from a thematic perspective. So, Harry, why don't you start us off here? Is there anything else that you see here that was important or not, and how this scene played out?
I'm trying to remember. I really enjoyed the scene. I'm just trying to remember the plot revelations here. I think it's more about what you said in your synopsis about how the guy died after because of the tattoo.
Yeah. Well, that and the helicopter.
Yeah, and the helicopter. But it's kind of funny because as a Canadian who's married to a French Canadian, I'm really paying a lot of my attention in this movie is paying attention to the mannerisms. This guy, the doctor here, because he's talking so fast. And people who are really fluent in French, I'm not just saying it's because they're fluent in French, but I find that a lot of people who are really good in French, they speak very quickly. And this is what this guy did. He was talking a mile a minute. But I don't know if that's because he's a doctor or that he's stressed or he's on acid because he is a coroner. So maybe he needs acid to get through his job. Who knows? But I just found...
It's cocaine, dude. It's
cocaine or speed or whatever he's taking. I was just really more paying attention to a lot of the mannerisms, and I found that more interesting than the plot. And I'm curious to see what you mean by thematic perspective here and what your opinion is there. Yeah, if you don't know if you can elaborate.
Yeah, well, what I meant specifically was his examination of the word tattoo.
Oh, right. Okay, yes. Tattoo. Yes.
Yeah.
Again, they're kind of like poking fun at how people talk, right? I mean, or not just how people talk, the differences between, Ontario and Quebec, in a sense.
Yeah, well, it felt interesting to me because he says the word tattoo, and then he asks Bouchard, like, what's the English word for that. And he's like, tattoo, but they pronounce it differently. It's like tattoo in French, but tattoo in English. And then he goes on a little bit. He's like, interesting. Like, you got two T's, two O's, but you guys pronounce the A and we pronounce the O's. Like, it should be because he's saying the French pronunciation is correct based on how it's spelled. And the English pronunciation doesn't make any sense based on the spelling because of the two T's and the two O's. But what I thought thematically is interesting here is you have the same word, which means the exact same thing in both languages, but it's different in how it's said. And I thought that was like, that's kind of the microcosm of the whole movie for me here. It's like, it's the same, but it's all different. Like from either you look at one side, from this side of the border, you look at it from that side of the border, it's the same, but it's different. And I thought that was, it's small, but I thought it was a really clever.
No, I mean, that's a great point. That's a great point. Sabotage.
Yeah. You say sabotage. I say sabotage.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe they should have done that in the movie.
They should have. You got to pay respect.
Yeah. Respect chat. Respect the chat. Anyway, but I've often felt that, and I don't know if it's actually true, that when you listen to people speaking French, it sounds like they're going like fucking 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, that was my point. That's why I found it
people who speak English sound like that to other people? Like, I feel like we talk pretty slowly. And I don't know if that's just because English is basically an amalgamation of so many different languages and we plug a bunch of shit in here and there, so it just comes out stilted and broken. Whereas French sounds very smooth and flowing because it's French and it's only French. You don't put words into French that aren't French words. They don't let it happen.
No,
English, different story.
No, but I think then when French or even other languages would slow down is when they do incorporate slang or English verbiage into when they talk. That's when it starts slowing down. So I'm not just saying, Frenchies speak fast and stuff like that. I mean, any culture, when you're in your native tongue, they'll go a mile a minute. And I think it's because it's so much smoother. Right. Exactly what you just said. Right. I find that true with any culture.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. And it's hard to know for sure without being bilingual if it's true or not. But it for English people, I think people who speak English as their native tongue kind of tend to feel that way. But so we have the clue of the tattoo. We have the clue of the helicopter. So what we do now is they run down the helicopter lead and head to a helicopter rental agency there. They're talking to the receptionist there, who's clearly enamored with Detective Bouchard. He's not digging it. She really liked that was a good bit of humor. She's like, I'll grab your number in case I think of anything. He's like, I don't have a card. Like, I'll take your number. He's like, okay, it's 911. They'll know how to reach me. I was like, that's a fucking boss line.
Yeah, and he delivered it good, and he kind of played it well where he wasn't insulting.
Yeah.
But he was insulting to her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, he was really putting her down. You gotta be fucking kidding me.
Oh, yeah. Really.
Right? But he didn't come across as a jerk. But I thought that's why I felt he played it really well. But he had that kind of blunt face about him. Like, he's smiling, but he's still saying, you've got to be fucking kidding.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, he played it really well. I thought that was really good. That was great.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they track down the helicopter pilot, Luke Terrian. They head to the bar. They find the guy. He's a big brute. And, there's a bit of a fight scene here. Not exactly going to win any awards for fight choreography. But they wrap him up eventually, stuff him in the trunk. And we get another nice little bit of bilingualism here as they're trying to stuff him into the trunk here. And I think this is where the fuck talk comes.
Yeah, the tabernacle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And this was funny, too, as Bouchard sort of explaining the ins and outs of fuck or tabernacle in French and how you can use it differently. So I thought this was a nice little piece here. So even if you're not bilingual, you get somebody explaining fuck to you in French, I thought was a nice piece. So how did that play out for you here? Have you picked up enough French to kind of hear what he's saying there, or did you need the subtitles and Julie to explain it to you?
No, I mean, I asked her about tabernacle, and because then he says, as I said, he adds adjectives which I cannot recall, and it's just like the bigger fuck or it's like your mom's pussy fuck or something like that. Like there's other stuff there that's added to it.
Yeah.
Because there's different ways of saying it. That's the gist of what my wife told me, and I was asking her about it because this is where she was kind of laughing, like she was enjoying more of the slang and the verbiage when she was starting to chuckle. Because this is the second or third time she's seen the film. But going back to the fight scene in the bar, I mean, this is a trope in buddy cop movies. Or, like, it doesn't have to really just be about buddy cop movies where the friend is getting into trouble and then the other guy is kind of with him but doesn't really want to help him, but he'll help him when he really has to, and then the tables get turned and stuff. So, yeah, I agree with you. The fight scenes are not the greatest, but they're not terrible. It's not like it was horrible to watch and cringeworthy. I did enjoy the scenes here and the flirtation between the barmaid and Ward, Detective Ward, and stuff like that, and you just see how they go about their business differently and their mannerisms and their professionalism and stuff like that and how things are done. So I enjoyed those scenes. And then I enjoyed it when they're tossing the guy into the car and how it ends. And it's like they're calm. And they ask him nicely, "Oh, sir, your foot's just in the way here. Do you mind if you tuck it in?" Instead of, and I know they still punch him out a few times there and stuff, but I just like how it ends instead of just it's another violent punch to knock him out and then they move the foot. I like that little ending there. I thought that was cute.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice bit of humor there. Canadian politeness.
Yeah, the Canadian politeness at it again. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. That was good. Yeah.
We'll fuck you up, but we'll be polite about it in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's good. It's like, Lulu, your boot is in the way. He's like, and he says sorry. Yeah. Like Luke says sorry. Throws it in there. Yeah, it's good. So there's some good buddy cop moments here. I mean, it shows its Canadianness, I suppose, in the fight scenes a little bit. So it doesn't quite play off as high action or anything like that. But that's okay. It's fine. So we jump in the car. We got a Bouchard's daughter's school for the ballet recital. And again, in true bad cop fashion, he's got to park up on the curb, his shitty car up on the curb and run in. And I actually did think this was funny. As I said before in the synopsis, he makes it in time. Like the bad cop always misses the kid's shit. Oh, huge piece of drama. And it always drives me nuts. It's such a stupid cliche. He actually makes it.
Yeah.
And not only does he make it, but he's so fucking into this ballet recital. I thought that was hilarious. And he says something like he yells up the stage is like, good luck girls, or go get them girls, or ladies. And there's one boy in there and he's like,
does he have to touch her like that, right? Because he's grabbing the waist and things like that. Like he's kind of concerned. And
he said that, but there was something else he said when he noticed it. He says, "Oh yeah," he says, "Go girls, you can do it." And he looks at the kid. He's like, "You too, Matthew." And then after he's like, does he need to put his hands there and shit? So that was good. But man, he was in, and I thought he played it really well because I didn't, expect to see that. He got the ballet recital and he's totally digging that shit. So
no, I agree with you. I enjoyed these scenes. It's different. You hit the nail on the head. Like it is a trope that the guy's going to miss the recital.
Yeah.
And then the daughter's going to be pissed. And then to make it up, he's got to rescue her. And even though that kind of stuff happens again, still, which is still a bit of a trope, but here he's still a good dad. It's not like I got to make it up to you.
Yeah, that's right.
So I enjoyed that.
Yeah,
but
it's nice that they turn it on its head a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the difference. Us Canadian folks, we value our family more than you American motherfuckers, right?
You Americans, yeah. Family values are alive and well north of Fort. Right.
I'm wondering if they're going out of their way to insult any potential American viewer here. It's like, look, we fucking make it to our kids' recitals.
Yeah. Well, I think the movie made exactly $10 in the United States. So, message received, bitches. So obviously Ward's been dragged to that. He meets the ex-wife, a little bit of chemistry going on there. She invites him over for dinner later, and they run out into the street. Car's getting towed, obviously, because it's parked on the fucking curb. And then out of nowhere, boom, car fucking blows up. And this is the only kind of moment of sanity is like, oh, we're fucked now. Suspects died in the car. We got to report this. Shit, what are we going to do? We should have just taken him right to headquarters, that whole thing. And this is kind of my problem with every cop movie, so I'm not going to hold this movie responsible for it, is they basically walk away from a serious situation here with no consequences.
Yeah, unscathed, no consequence. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a movie. So this is a movie trope. It's not just cop movies. Yeah. It's any movie. No,
it is any movie. So like I say, I'm not necessarily going to hold them responsible for it, but I was watching it. And I got a little chuckle out. I think as time goes on, these types of tropes start to play less and less convincingly over time. It's like, dude, your fucking car just blew up in the front of a motherfucking elementary school. Like, does that shit happen in 2018? These dudes would be in quarantine. Schools would be on lockdown. I mean, there's no fucking way that they're going home to dinner tonight. No way.
Unless it's Luke Skywalker's Academy. Then it's a different story.
Well, okay. It's a little different, you know. You got the Force, you can use some mind tricks.
No, you just walk away from that shit. It don't matter.
You didn't see this car explode today. I didn't see this car explode today. You're going to let me go home and have a nice dinner with my partner's ex-wife. Why don't you go home and have dinner with your partner's ex-wife? But these guys aren't boss like Luke Skywalker, so it doesn't apply. Anyway, no, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say Luke Skywalker's not a boss, but that's okay.
Well, I guess
that's a different story.
I guess we already had our last podcast, so we can move on. So over dinner, we get some of the backstory here. Actually, I'll go back here. One thing that I really did like about this scene, after the car blows up, they're standing there in the parking lot wondering what the fuck's they're going to do, is how effortlessly Ward, or call him Fiora, as the in his performance, how effortlessly he switches between English and French. Because he's swearing in English, he's swearing in French, he's just going back and forth, boom, boom, smooth. I thought that was really good, and I thought that must have been a really fucking tough assignment. And the reason why I say that is I knew this dude once. He was French-Canadian from Quebec. He was educated in English, but he had never spoken English to native English-speaking people. Like, he could read and write in English, but he had never spoken it to anybody other than other French people who were just practicing until, like, I met him, and he was sort of in a group where, like, everybody was English-speaking, so he had to speak English conversationally with English-speaking people sort of for the first time in his life. And he did really well, and as time went on, he did much better. But early in the morning, you couldn't talk to him because he wasn't a morning person, so he couldn't do it in his head. So he couldn't talk back to you. He had to write little notes like, give me half an hour. Because what he said was like, you'd say something to him in English, and he'd have to translate that in his mind to French, formulate his response in French, translate that to English, and then say that English back to you. So it was always a bit of a delay. So he could not switch back and forth so smoothly like that. So when I was watching this, I'm like, fuck, he's just going back and forth, English, French, and using vernacular slang. I thought that was a really notable piece of his performance there that honestly probably just doesn't get me played. But anyway.
I mean, it's interesting, but I mean, I'm not sure really that paints a full picture. I mean, that particular picture with this gentleman you were talking about or referring to, a lot of people I know who can, go back and forth. I mean, that's nothing. Especially people who are from Quebec. I've known people who are from Quebec. They come here, even though they have a minor accent, they can just instantaneously go back and forth between the two. No problem. What I can't recall here is that Bouchard, they show Ward more easy to transition effortlessly between the two languages. Ward struggles a bit more, even though he can accomplish it. Again, is that saying something as a thought stereotype? As you said, this is a French-made movie, so I don't know if this was made by a Frenchman or French-Canadian or made by someone who's from Ontario or somewhere else, but is that a stereotype?
Well, I mean,
French-speaking people cannot easily talk in English as fluently as English people talking in French.
It is made by a French-Canadian. So this is a French-Canadian production, French-Canadian director and writer. I think, I mean, my impression was more that, like, Ward had more formal French education.
Well, yeah, but he's more educated, it seems. He comes across, he's dressing differently. He's coming across, as you said, far more educated. There's a different sense of professionalism and expectations of those professionalism, not just coming from them, but their captains, as we talked about, who's the Joker, who's the more serious, straight-laced guy. And then we're talking about something we really haven't talked about, or maybe you're going to bring up later, is the kind of not the battle, but just the differences and the politics, and I guess the perception of, a certain part of Canada and then Quebec, right? And specifically when we talk about Ontario versus Quebec. So I'm just wondering if some of those, pieces and stereotypes and prejudices are put into this movie, and whether they're played for laughs or are they trying to make any commentary here?
I mean, I think primarily it is for laughs and commentary in as much as anybody gives a fuck. Like, Quebec has culturally speaking, there certainly are differences, and the legal system is actually quite different in Quebec than it is in English Canada. But I think they can play, what I think they were able to do is like they're able to play some of these stereotypes for good taste humor, because as different as it might be, I think most people feel still pretty stereotypically Canadian about it, which is it's all good. It doesn't really fucking matter anyway. Like we can all laugh at ourselves.
Oh, we can, but I'm just wondering if people who live in Quebec versus, hardcore Quebecois people versus people who are in Ontario. I used to live in Ontario, so I've seen that battle a little bit, right? More than you get out here on the Western Canada. So.
Well, sure, yeah. And I can't, having never experienced that. I mean, I've been to Montreal, I've been to Toronto, but I don't know those cultures. I don't know that rivalry as people who live there. And even within Quebec, rural Quebec and urban Quebec are different. Like you go to the cities, it's different than the rural areas as far as, from a cultural perspective when it comes to, Canada versus Quebec and those things here, which we don't really get a lot of in this movie. So I don't really know where the fuck we started with this whole thing.
Well, I was just saying if there's if the film is trying to pick at any commentary, we're talking about your theme is like, you're saying you can say it two different ways, but it means the same thing. And so we're really all one people. But at the same time, they really go out of their way to poke at the differences.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then is the commentary, I mean, the joke is that people from Quebec are less classy or, educated or anything like that. Because as I said, you look at the two captains, you look at the two protagonists, there's a visual difference, their mannerisms are different, and it's not like they mixed it. Like the captains maybe were reversed.
I think that the French people seem to have fewer fucks to give. That's certainly the impression I get from the movie. But don't forget that often, whether it's buddy cop movies or any cop movies, who's the hero? It's always the renegade cop who's the hero, right? So for what you're saying there is, is there a commentary here? I think that you're right. They are playing it like maybe we're not, from a French perspective, maybe we're not buttoned down and super classy and refined, but we're down to earth, fighting a good fight, getting the good shit done. And you guys are worried about what kind of tie you're wearing today. So, which again is a very buddy cop trope, but who's always the hero in that situation? It's always the rogue guy. And I think that's maybe not entirely the case here, because they're both obviously are heroes here. But that's a good question. I don't know that I can answer it exactly. Is it how they're playing it there?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to bring it up if you had any thoughts on this. But I'm sure maybe we'll talk about it more as the goes on.
Yeah, there's definitely more coming there. So we get the dinner scene. We get some of the background the backstory for both Ward and Bouchard. And, whatever, nothing really too important from a plot perspective. I don't find this too much from a character perspective here. Next morning, the boys are waiting outside of Tarian's place, waiting for their search warrant. Bouchard gets impatient, busts in. Again, I was like, why doesn't he just fucking wait? Like, the dude's dead. He's dead. Wait for the search warrant. But they don't wait for the search warrant. Bust into his house. Another dead body. And the girl up in the basement. So we knew that Tarian had been busted for dope before. So, it was an ex-con. So not too much of a surprise there. And we get the body of Grossbutt, who was a hockey owner who had sold the Quebec to Colorado. And the whole house, Bouchard trips the booby trap, whole house explodes basically in fire. And these two guys, as they try to escape, and they do, and they get really high.
Yes.
Really high. And then, I don't know. I mean, I laughed. I don't know if it was a great scene where they're back in the captain's office there. And this, again, I mean, like, this is in every buddy cop movie where the captain is yelling, apoplectic. This guy is ready to have a stroke. And the two cops are really flippant about the whole thing, only this time they're also stoned.
This is Riggs and Murtaugh, man.
This is totally Riggs and Murtaugh. Yeah. Mayhem and chaos.
Yeah.
No, I'm chaos. You're mayhem.
The thing is, you really can't top that.
No, you cannot.
That's the difference, right? So when I see this scene, even though it's like, they're laughing because they're high, it's like, I just can't help but think back to Lethal Weapon and its sequels, and even, you say what you want about the quality of the sequels, but at least their chemistry cannot be rivaled. Even in those scenes where they're getting chewed out by the captain.
Right.
And even the captain, I enjoy that captain better in the Lethal Weapon movies.
Yeah.
Than I do here. That's the one thing. I just keep missing that. That's something with most buddy cop movies that are inferior. I look back at Lethal Weapon or Tango and Cash, and those are my go-tos, or that's where the bar is set high for me. And, I just think about that, and it's just, it just does not meet the mark, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I felt the same thing watching this was you can't do it better. You can't top Lethal Weapon, which did it the best. You can't top that. So if you're going to do a scene like this, you got to subvert it somehow. You got to turn this on its head somehow. And just making them high doesn't do it.
No.
No. It's still kind of amusing, but it's too much. It's too much of a callback.
And it's too simple. It's too simple. As you said, you got to do something different with it.
Right. Yeah. And they don't really make too much of an effort to do that. And I think that was one of the symptoms of the weaknesses of this movie is doing, what's familiar with buddy cop movies, but not, every now and then when they subvert it, when they twist it, effectively, that's when this movie works. But when they just play it like it's just a regular buddy cop movie, then that's when it starts to fall a little bit flat. And I think this scene's a symptom of that. But again, obviously, they're off the case, as is another trope. It's like, you guys are off the case.
Yep.
And Ward's got to go back to Ontario. Bouchard stays in Quebec, obviously. So we'll kind of jump ahead here because pretty much right away, it almost feels like the next day. It's not really that clear passage of time, but Ward's investigating a homicide in Ontario of a woman with a skate. Like that blade, the blade of that skate was like down to her nose. That was some fierce violence there. I mean, wow. That's quite the injury there.
That's like Jason Voorhees style. You needed that kind of strength.
That kind of supernatural strength. Yeah. Exactly.
That's the goalie that needed to do that damage. But I find it a little odd. But that's okay. It's just a movie. It's just played for shock value. It's like, oh, look at that. But I've thought about doing that to some of the opponents we've faced over the years.
Yeah, I figured that was just baseline for you when you step onto the ice. That guy, this skate on my foot right now, this is inside your nose in 20 minutes, pal.
That's the old me.
That's the old you. Yeah.
Yeah, the old me was, definitely.
The new you, too old for this shit.
No, just I value my money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm gone. That's the problem, right? It's a difference now. If there's no holes barred, old me would still be here.
Well, no, it's still too old for this shit. So,
I have one question for you now.
Yeah.
This lady, who's the agent who died, the victim. Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. This is related to the Eric Lindros situation?
That is correct.
Okay. Because I always thought it was the dad. What did it have to do with his agent? I thought it was the dad who convinced him you don't sign with Quebec.
Yeah, it was. So I think they just kind of made this up. I mean, obviously they made all of it up, but Eric Lindros' agent was his dad, but both of his parents.
Was that the case? I didn't know if that was his dad. Okay.
That was, So he didn't have, they just kind of added this on there because I guess they didn't want to murder Eric Lindros' parents in the movie here.
Okay.
I mean, they tried to murder them for real in the movie, but I guess they heard that would have been illegal, so they decided to create a character, and they murdered her for real instead. So that's not true. They didn't murder anybody for real. So but this is the Eric Lindros case here where he was like, no, got drafted by the Quebec Nordiques and said, no, I'm not going to play for them. I'm not really sure why he didn't want to play for Quebec, but worked out for them because they got a king's ransom in return for that pick. And then, I mean, obviously they got sold to Colorado.
Yep, but then they just kicked out. Oh, yeah. Yep, worked out for them, and Eric Lindros got a concussion and a short career playing in Philly. So
Lindros didn't get a concussion. He got another concussion and then another concussion. So he got his brain bounced around the inside of his brain, which is unfortunate for him. But he always came off as kind of a douche.
Yeah, he did. I don't want to wish harm on any person unless they really deserve it, but I'm neutral on how things worked out for Eric Lindros. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. I'm in 100% agreement with you there. Don't wish harm on any person, but sympathy only goes so far.
Justice may have been served.
It may have been. Yeah, it may have been. Yeah. I don't know if karma's a thing, but he was a good hockey player. But anyway, so the tattoo leads them. This is when they start to kind of get the full picture of what's going on here is all the tattoos, I mean, that one, they lead to the next victim, but they're also demonstrating that these victims are people that may be seen as responsible for selling Canadian hockey to the United States.
Yeah.
So they're kind of putting it all together. Next one leads to the owner of the team in Los Angeles. No, sorry, the owner of Edmonton, who sold the Great One to Los Angeles. Obviously, names aren't named here, but they're talking about the sale of Wayne Gretzky from the Edmonton Oilers to the Los Angeles Kings. And that was a sale. It was not a trade. It just sold him for money. So he's due to have an interview with Canadian comedian Rick Mercer, who is playing the Don Cherry parody here. How did you think this parody of Don Cherry came off here with Rick Mercer?
I wasn't a fan.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I wasn't a fan. I mean, I'm not a huge Rick Mercer fan, but I'm not a guy who hates him either. I mean, he's fine for what he does. And it's not because I really don't watch him all that often. It's just, I got the parody that they're trying to rip off Don Cherry here. It's just, I felt like the whole brawl came across as very amateurish and slapstick. I know that was the point. It just didn't, for some reason, it just didn't fit. Yeah. That's just kind of what I got out of it.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. The brawl didn't fit at all. It just didn't play right. Like, it was so amateurish.
Yeah.
I know it's a movie and they're playing for laughs, but this would never happen in real life. And Rick Mercer is fine. Like, he's all right. I could take him or leave him. And I'm not a big Don Cherry fan at all. But this wasn't a very effective parody of Don Cherry at all. It just made it cartoonish. And I know Don Cherry can be a bit of a cartoon character himself. That's the character that he's playing on TV. But it didn't offer really any effective commentary on how Don Cherry commentates the games when he's on TV. So this part really felt flat.
He wasn't racist enough.
Yeah, he wasn't racist enough, not at all. He totally wasn't. And it felt they had such a good opportunity here to really send up Don Cherry. But I think that they might have felt they needed to play it a little bit safe here mostly because Don Cherry is, largely seen very positively by the hockey watching community in Canada. Most people who are hockey fans, especially
in Ontario,
older fans who have grown up watching them, they're all about Don Cherry. So
especially in Ontario, right? I mean, this movie's really going to be seen by the bulk of people in Ontario and Quebec. So they know we're really piss off at any potential Leaf fans there, right?
Right.
He's a huge supporter of the Leafs. So
yeah, so that's unfortunate because I thought they had a good opportunity here to do something very funny, but
yeah, I mean, I think they should have really taken advantage of this. I mean, it's really wasted opportunity.
Yeah. So as we move on, they eventually track down Pickleton, who was the target, as he has two ladies murdered, tied to the Zamboni, and there's the mysterious figure in the hockey mask again that had shown up at the start of the film, as we had alluded to. Still no idea.
Just a little sidetrack.
Yeah.
We really do have Puck, as much as I really detest Wayne Gretzky, we really do have that idiot Pucklington to thank for all this. Because if Gretzky was not traded, the Flames may have done a better job at keeping their prime assets and spending whatever it took to keep all their guys there. We'd be living in a different world as a Flames fan.
Okay, so you're saying that if Edmonton had kept Gretzky, the Flames would have been more compelled to be competitive against the Oilers? Is that what you're saying?
In a sense. I mean, I'd have to trace back my steps in terms of... I know Gretzky was traded in 88. Is that correct? Yeah, he was, because he was a king. He was a king when we won the Cup.
Yeah.
But if he was an Oiler, maybe we wouldn't have won the Cup if he was still on the Oilers. So there's that. But just long term, I think that there would be a greater chance that Risebrough wouldn't have been allowed to derail that team as in the way he did.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because, I think back, and I was hoping we were going to get into some hockey here, which I hope anybody who's listening to this, hey mom, is okay with some hockey discussion. I don't know. You look back on the NHL in those days, and it almost feels like it was the Wild West, like anything goes. It's like there weren't rules for anything. Obviously, there was no salary cap, but like you could trade a guy for cash or a bag of pucks. Like it didn't matter. It just felt like there was no framework, there was no structure to the league. So anything goes. So is what you're saying true? I mean, I guess so, but it just felt to me that like everybody was just kind of out to get theirs, and it didn't matter. It almost felt like the hockey was secondary because there was no system. Nobody really knew what worked and what didn't work. That's kind of what I feel when I watch games from that era and I see players just running around on the ice doing shit. Like they have no idea what's going to work and what's not, so they're just doing shit. And some people find that really entertaining. It was fine for the era, but
I don't really agree with that sentiment. I mean, there were still plays. I mean,
there were.
Like you still have, defensive traps. You still had, I know that what you're talking about running around the ice. I mean, head hunting and hitting and clutch and grab and all that stuff. I mean, anything goes. And in that respect, I agree with. But I think there was still lots of creativity on the ice. I mean, the goaltending was just subpar.
Oh, the goaltending was abysmal.
Yeah, that's the real difference right there.
Well, that was a big difference. I don't know. Again, this is one guy's opinion. But as far as the league was structured, the whole league felt like you didn't know what was going to happen. Like you could trade whoever for whoever. And
oh, you're talking about that? I mean, yeah, but that's exciting. Now it's like you can't do anything because you have the cap. I mean, that's good for the quality in the league and creating competitiveness. But I mean, I just feel it's not as exciting now. I mean, look at this trade deadline that went just past us. Nothing happened.
No, nothing happened, and that's not exciting. But I'll trade that one day of crazy excitement for a whole season of better quality sport, which is what I'm there for in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I'm just saying, I mean, all I'm saying, my point is wasn't about the quality of hockey or trying to keep teams in play with the top teams. It's just more with respect to the Flames getting fucked by one asshole.
Yeah, and they did. Boy,
right? And it started with trading Gilmore. Boom, just right there.
Yeah, I mean, it started there. Didn't end there, but it certainly started there. But it was also the start of an era where, whether that mattered or not, they wouldn't have been able to afford any decent hockey players. Same thing happened to Edmonton. I mean, they couldn't afford anybody after a while either. So you end up with this era where like you might be able to draft well and have young players, but as soon as those young players reach that age where they could sign a contract for big money, they're gone. And that happened throughout the late 90s, early 2000s, where that happened to a lot of Canadian. I mean, Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal, Toronto could still afford to put together a team because lots of money there. Vancouver could still sort of manage to be competitive because there's lots of money there. But, so long Winnipeg, so long Quebec, Ottawa, Calgary, Edmonton. I mean, they were hanging on by their fingernails for many years.
Oh, I agree. I just wanted to say, fuck you, Doug Risebrough, wherever you are.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that sentiment. Yeah, fuck you, Doug Risebrough. But thanks for listening. We appreciate the... Okay, anyway, back to the movie. So Picklington, or whatever his name was, he's dead. And the next clue leads
We're pausing for silence.
Yeah. Moment of silence. He was a character, Peter Pocklington.
I still remember the mob when Gretzky was traded. Oh, my goodness.
He's lucky that he got out alive. Like,
yeah. I know.
Yeah. I saw an interview with him it was a while ago now, a number of years ago, after he had fled the country, basically. And he looked haggard, man. Like, I felt bad for the guy because, like, he
sleeps with one eye open, man.
He definitely sleeps with one eye open for sure. He's got to switch his eye patch back and forth, Kramer style, because his eyes dried out. Staying open 24 hours a day. It's the only way. But he looked haggard, man. I mean, he explained it, and I was like, I get it. Like, I got it. I understood it. But, fuck, I took some balls, dude.
Well, again, Bettman wasn't around then. Sorry, yeah, he wasn't around then.
No, he wasn't.
He was not,
yes,
yeah.
No. Okay, so anyway, so back to the movie. So the next clue leads them to New York money, which they deduce is the commissioner of the league, Harry Buttman, and he's played by basically a little person, bad haircut, total douchebag, as the commissioner of the league.
I did get I'm not a tall guy, but I'm not as short as this guy, but I don't like people making fun of short people because Bettman's, in reality, he's like around my height.
Yeah.
But he's not like a little person. But the fact that they made him a little person, I usually wouldn't laugh at that because it's really them poking fun at myself, but I had to get a chuckle out of it. I did laugh.
It was funny, the characterization of him. I mean, I thought it was a little mean-spirited, but yeah, it's okay. I don't know if you want to talk about Bettman now, or wait, we could leave it till later maybe, but...
Yeah, I think let's leave it to the end.
Yeah, okay. So... so they figure out, it's probably going to New York. What are we going to do now? So we go back to Ward's place now for the mirror scene here where we have dinner there, and instant chemistry between Ward's sister and Bouchard. Bouchard obviously, too cool for school. And then they end up going back to her place for some freaky shit.
Some French pastries.
Yeah, French pastries. That's right. I remember the first time when I saw the movie, and I laughed at that scene, and I watched it this time, and I was like, this is really off. I don't know I don't know what it is, but it just was really an unusual sex scene for sure. It was definitely gratuitous. There's no question about that. But it's French, so you gotta have boobies if you're making a French movie.
Oh, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the leave the Quebec and.
That's funny, but I was like, oh man, it's weird.
Yeah.
But it was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. The masked assailant is attacking at Ward's house while they're back at her place. So obviously they know they're getting close here.
No, so like that Luke Terrian,
yeah,
he attacks their house, right?
He
like,
attacks the house, yeah.
He attacks
and
the
they
house,
realize him,
and the son helps the dad, Ward, escape. But I'm wondering, it's weird. Why would he, like, they already knew it was him at that point, like, for sure, right? Because of the house.
Yeah, at the house, well, yeah, they figured it was probably him. But we don't know that it's him until this
that
scene.
reveal, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
right.
But again, this is a trope of all these kind of cop movies or thrillers where the killer will just be stupid and, again, get caught and get revealed. And it's like, oh, now we know for sure. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You know, they're like, okay, well, he's obviously alive. Who was in the trunk? They called back to Quebec, and it was the barmaid that Martin had been flirting with was actually the dead body.
Yeah, I mean, like, think about that. Like, what a great... You got out. Everyone thought you were dead. It's perfect. Why go after the cops at that point?
Well, because they're getting close to the guy who's pulling the strings. So they got to rub these two guys up. I guess. That's why. Because he's got to continue his killing spree, and these two guys are in the way. So, I guess. Yeah, that's why. I don't know. But anyway, so after they figure out that Terrian's still alive, it was Rita, the barmaid, in the car. They get a call from Bouchard's wife that the daughter's missing. She's been kidnapped. The killer calls the real killer, the guy who's behind it all. He's got the girl, and he basically says to these guys, stay out of my way. So they head over back to Quebec, and they kidnap Butman, who's in town for some speech. Probably because they were going to sell a team to Texas, I think was what they were intimating there. So
Houston.
Houston. So so they kidnap him. They stuff him in the trunk, which, you know, he fits a lot easier.
Yeah.
And they go to exchange him for the daughter at the abandoned warehouse at the dock. And this is where the final confrontation takes place. Let's just kind of talk about the wrap up of the movie here. We're pretty much there. I mean, it's all kind of plot at this point here where they're kind of going from A to B to C to D. But they do the prisoner exchange. The girl's got the bomb strapped to her because, of course, she's got a bomb strapped to her. They manage to disarm it. There's a fight in the parking lot with the killer, who's just some dude, right?
Yeah.
And he's just some guy, right? Like, I didn't miss anything here, did I?
No, he's just some Joe.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But he knows how to make a bomb and has access to explosives.
Yeah.
So they fight, Bouchard puts the bomb in his pocket. He blows up. They get the daughter, and everybody lives happily ever after. And also, for some reason, Butman says that there's a rule now that no Canadian team will ever have to move from its home city. So the end. That's Bond Cop, Bad Cop. So let's just kind of go through the climax here, the confrontation, Harry. So how did this play out for you from an action perspective, and any other thematic elements that you found here?
Not much on the thematic side. I think this is just standard cop/thriller wrap up here. One thing I did enjoy, partly, not all of it, was the Luke Terrian. He is following the cops as well as trying to get Butman, and he's the Montreal mascot. I guess a bear or something like that. And he's doing the taxi driver scene in the mirror. I mean, I really, even though I chuckled, they lingered on that a little too much, and I got kind of tired of it. But I did find it funny how he's trying to climb down the stairs when he's following the cops, and he couldn't really, he's trying to figure out, like, he can't see, he can't put his feet on the steps properly, so I did enjoy that. I liked just watching him struggling just to do a simple task. Mm-hmm. But how they deal with him was very anticlimactic, I guess. Like, he shows up at the end again, does he not? Yes, he does.
Yeah.
He shows up at the end again, and he gets shot by whoever this mastermind is. I don't know what to call him. Snoke?
Yeah, he was Snoke.
Snoke. The origins of Snoke.
Yeah.
He probably had a better backstory than Snoke.
He did. Yeah, he did.
But yeah, I mean, the rest, like the stuff that was happening in the barge of the ship where the mastermind is holding the daughter there, it's very bland. I like the setup. It's kind of like set up a little hockey rink inside there because he's so obsessed with hockey. And it's like, okay, that's all right. If you're going to do it, if you're going this hardcore about hockey, and you might as well go the whole distance. Everything hockey, put the girl in the chair and set her ice or in a net, and that's good. Just where was the Zamboni? I was just missing that. But yeah, the rest, unfortunately, didn't do a lot for me. I mean, I like when he escapes, I like Bouchard, doing the Indiana Jones or the James Bond, and he jumps onto the hood of the car, but then he flies off because he's not James Bond.
Right. Yeah.
And he gets hurt. And I like that, but then I realize he's hurt, but then this guy gets out of the car and just starts this pimp squeak. Like, he's literally a pimp squeak. I have a hard time believing he can even has the strength to lift his head, and he's starting to beat him up. So I didn't like that, but I like the conclusion, how Ward puts the bomb, turns the tables on him, and plants it on him, and he blows up. I love that explosion. That was pretty sweet.
There were lots of bits flying.
Yeah, that's like one of the better body explosions I've seen on film. So hats off to the pyrotechnics there. But I also found it again kind of silly and eye-rolling that all of a sudden Ward can disarm the bomb, and he just happens to say, "Oh, I was bomb squad a couple years back."
Right. Yeah. Like, okay, of course you were. Yeah.
Of course you were. So it's like, oh, really?
Well, the thing is, there's only like 8 Canadian cops because we don't have any crime. So they got to do it all, right? You got to be SWAT. You got to be bomb squad. You got to be detective. You got to be beat cop. So that's typical. Yeah. I don't know if you knew that, but.
No, I didn't. No.
Yeah.
That explains everything.
It's true to life accurate there. Yeah.
Movie just ends just like that, and then you get the Gary Bettman thing, and I think it's just all is well. Don't worry, hockey fans. Gary Bettman watched this movie. He's going to learn his lesson.
Yeah,
because if he does it again, maybe he'll feel threatened. That some weirdo out there will actually go out for him. Let's go after him. So
maybe try to tattoo him. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
All in all, not the greatest ending here.
Yeah, I agree. It really flounders in the third act here. The confrontation doesn't have any weight because the villain didn't have any weight. He's just some guy. Like, who is this guy? We don't get anything on this villain here. And I'm not saying that we need to have some kind of sympathetic backstory here about how he was passed over the picked last at hockey when he was a child or some bullshit. But he's just nothing. He's just some pipsqueak.
You know what I would have liked? I would have liked it if it was Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah, that would have been good.
Then, seeing him blow up, this would be the best movie of all time.
Actually, you know what? That would have been funny if they had done something like that, if they had got a former hockey player to play that role. I mean, that would have been a tough sell maybe, but that might have been entertaining. But yeah, they went nowhere with this character. Wasn't a character,
No, I mean, I don't know where this guy came from, and I don't know. This just felt really amateurish.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. So I think that kind of wraps up the film here. So let's just kind of spitball a little bit about some items here. I did want to talk about the state of the NHL, maybe both at the time this movie was made, mid-2000s, and today. Gary Bettman as the commissioner of the league. Like, what are some of your thoughts here on Bettman and the NHL and hockey?
To be honest, I may surprise you, and maybe some people are going to hunt me down, as I really don't mind Bettman. I've grown to, I wouldn't say appreciate him, but I respect the business side of him. I think what he's trying to do is he is trying to stabilize hockey in a sense, because we don't make the money and the revenue that the other sports do. I do think that there unfortunately still is some agendas there with Bettman and not getting another Canadian team back into Canada, and I think that's a shame. I think that's something that still needs to happen. And he's still made some blunders. I mean, I don't know why Phoenix still has a team, or Florida for another example. But I mean, he has moved other teams. I mean, Atlanta moved. It wasn't working there. So he did move Atlanta to Winnipeg. Winnipeg got a team. So we did get a team back. Just need another one. But I mean, it's not easy. Where do you really put it, right? Hamilton. Obviously getting Nordiques back is your first logical step. I just move Arizona to Quebec and just let's go, make it happen already. But that's just me. But I appreciate what he's doing. I think, and then regarding the state of the NHL, I mean, the salary cap has some parity now with the teams as we talked about. So that's a good thing long term. Every team's got a chance. And we're still getting dynasty teams out of that, which is surprising, right? We had Chicago, we have Pittsburgh tearing it up and winning multiple championships. So that's a good thing. I thought when you introduced salary cap here, those chances of seeing dynasty teams would go the way of the dodo, and that didn't happen. And that's a good thing. I think hockey's becoming slightly more popular in the States. Slowly. So it's a good thing. I mean, I think hockey's in decent shape from my perspective, but I will say this, the state of my life over the past 2 years, I've watched all but maybe 3 or 4 hockey games outside of watching the World Premiers. So I've seen like one Flames game all year so far. We're getting in the last stretch of the season. I'll watch playoffs, but I just haven't had time. So for me to follow the NHL right now or any other sport, I'm just in a place in my life right now, I'm just too fucking busy. So
yeah.
It's hard. So I can't really comment on, I've been watching too much hockey on TV lately.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Well, first off, I'm going to 100% agree with you on the Gary Bettman issue. I'm actually surprised that people buy into him being such a villain. I think that he plays the villain on TV for the benefit of the ownership group. Like, he doesn't do anything that the owners don't tell him to do. He works for the owners. So
exactly. Yeah. And I feel sorry for the guy as he's getting booed every time with the Stanley Cup and stuff. I think that shit's got to stop. I really do think so.
Stop. But you know what? I think he relishes it a little bit. Like, he strikes me as a guy, like, he knows that's who he is, and he's happy to do that because it shields the league. Like, then you can look upon the owners as the good guys and the league as the good guys, and he's the bad guy. And I think that's kind of part of what they pay him for. And I think he's sort of grown into it and likes it a little bit. But I don't think it's appropriate. Anybody who thinks that doesn't understand the league at all. Like, to think he's the bad guy, because if you take a look at where the state of the league was before he took over, and in the 25, 30 years since, like where it is now, I mean, it's grown. We have more Canadian teams than we did then, or the same number anyway, because they expanded to Ottawa and went back to Winnipeg. So there are 7 Canadian teams now. There were never more than 7. I agree that it'd be nice if they went back to Quebec, and I do think that they seriously considered it, but there is a question of the East-West balance there. But I mean, that's nitpicking away. So
I think that'll happen, honestly.
I do too. I think it will happen.
Within 10 years, Quebec will have a team again.
I think so too, and I think they want to go there, and it's just a question of finding the right fit, and it's probably going to have to be a relocation, not an expansion. That's what
it'll be Arizona. Arizona's gone.
The reason why I don't think that is because I don't think they want to take a Western team and put it in the East. And then they have to draw the lines again because they want to have.
No, but then this is where, in my opinion, Toronto should come back to the West.
Yeah, but Detroit probably comes back to the West before Toronto.
Maybe, but I still like that fantasy of Toronto, Montreal in the finals. If it ever could happen, I hate the fact you've robbed the NHL of that.
Well, yeah, but it's not. It's in a hypothetical 32-team league.
I know, the odds are nothing, I know, but
zero.
But the thing is here, again, I haven't been watching that much hockey, but when I was watching hockey, like quite a bit 2 years ago and previously, I mean, that rivalry is not what it used to be.
Well, no, it's not.
So, I mean, big deal, right?
Exactly, yeah. But, I mean, I see what you're saying, but overall, I think that a lot of the villainy that's placed on Bettman is imaginary. It's not Bettman who sold Winnipeg to Phoenix and Quebec to Colorado. It's those owners. They didn't have ownership groups in those cities who were willing to keep those teams in those cities, and they didn't have arenas to play a team in. So, like, that's what happened there. And, yeah, he's grown the game in the United States. But guess what? Like, that just means that there's so many more places for Canadian hockey players to go play and have jobs, which is what happens. Like, there's still more Canadian players. Like, it's an imaginary thing. And that when I watch a movie like this, they don't... Like, they're pandering to the people who are not thinking about it and being like, yeah, Bettman, what a douche.
Yeah.
Right? So that was one of my criticisms of the movie, is it didn't have a very nuanced opinion. It was a very basic viewpoint of the NHL and of Bettman and the ownership and well, maybe not the ownership, because they are the ones who will effectively dictate these things. But...
Well, I mean, no, some of the owners, didn't they die in this movie?
Yes, they did.
So there you go.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
So they did die. Yeah.
They got what was coming to them.
Yes.
Those bastards.
Now, fuck you guys for financing a team so we can have
yeah. How dare you finance it so we can watch hockey, building nice arenas, and bastards. How dare they, Harry?
I know. So how about yourself? You talking about themes or anything here? Anything else you picked up?
Yeah. Well, okay. So for overall for the movie, again, the most fun pieces here is in the bilingual language play. And again, I don't speak French. My background is in language, in English. So I get a lot of pleasure out of seeing these interplays and these differences where we can say the same thing so differently and in different ways. And it's so bizarre that you don't have a translation for something in one language. You know, like you say something in one language, well, what's the English version of that? And like there really isn't one. Like you said, like you could say fuck in French and you could say bigger fuck in French. We wouldn't say that. There's no translation for that in English. Because you don't say bigger fuck.
Yeah.
And so things like that, I think, are really interesting. And I think there's a lot of humor there. And I thought they did an excellent job playing that humor. And it's so fascinating to me that you can write a script and shoot a movie bilingually, almost 50-50, and, you know, for its problems and have it work. And that's what's interesting to me here is that I don't know what it's, I mean, it is an interesting, it doesn't make any statements about Canadian culture, but it is an interesting window into Canadian culture that we have these distinct languages and cultures within the same country, and that's not super common. It happens in other parts of the world, but it's not super common. So that's where the fun is here. And the hockey stuff to me is as big a hockey fan as I am, as much as I love hockey, watching it, playing it, talking about it, the hockey stuff in this film is a total throwaway for me.
I agree. Yeah, I was amused, as I said. It was more of an amusing thing when I first watched the movie. I'm saying, wow, okay, we're really going after Batman here. And at that time, I was like very amused and interested, and I semi-appreciated it. And that was the takeaway. That's the one memory I have of this movie.
Yeah.
Was that Gary Bettman was the victim, or the intended victim in the end, for the end game for the villain. But watching it again, I mean, it's really nothing here about hockey in a sense. No. Just a statement of how, you know, fuck these American businessmen, how dare they take away our game to the United States. But in the end, it's strengthened our game in a sense too. So, hockey needs to, you know, now it's spreading like wildfire, especially in Southern California. Mm-hmm. Hockey's very popular down there. So, I mean, I think that's a good thing.
That's a great thing. I 100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's a shame. I mean, as you and I have said, like, hockey's such a great game, and unfortunately it doesn't quite have that presence in lore in popular culture. And, you know, as an example, like, how many good football movies are there where that game is glorified and romanticized, where like you can watch it and it's like, oh man, that's a great sports movie. There's a novel that I read I think it's called Wonderland. I can't remember the exact name of it. It's by an American novelist, Michael Chabon, and it's about baseball. And I'm not a baseball fan. I find it dull. But if that's your sport, that's cool. But it's such a good book, and it treats that game with such romanticism and nostalgia and mysticism. That sport is such an ingrained piece of American culture, and it really gets such great treatment in pop culture. And hockey doesn't have that piece yet, and I would love, and this movie doesn't help it, right? It doesn't do it. I'd love to see a movie or another piece of media, novel, whatever, really give the game of hockey that treatment, because I think it really deserves it, you know?
You need the Starship Troopers version of those guys playing hockey. Doing flips, yeah. Maybe you'll get... So maybe that'll get some butts in the seats.
Yeah, that would definitely do it. I'd watch it. I don't know that I'd like it, but I'd watch it.
No, but I mean, you use the word mysticism. I'm mystified on baseball. What the fuck is that shit? Anyways.
All right, well, let's wrap up Bon Cop, Bad Cop here, Harry. So why don't you give me your final thoughts and a recommendation, and is this a rare antiquity?
I partially enjoyed myself. I mean, there's stuff here to like, especially, again, I think this is made for a specific kind of audience. Canadian one, hockey fan another, or just a hockey fan too, if you know enough about the sport, because as we talked about, there's not really anything about the actual sport of hockey. It's just the politics of hockey that transpired in the mid 1990s or, you know, early 1990s to early 2000s, that decade or decade and a half, where we were seeing teams move and relocate. So the vilified Gary Bettman. So, I mean, if you appreciate the commentary there, the people poking fun at Bettman and what was happening at the sport at the time, you'll enjoy this movie. I guess if you're a buddy cop fan, I'm not sure there's enough here for you to really latch onto. So I wouldn't say this movie is for you because there's not enough here from that perspective that's really worthwhile. So it's kind of a mixed bag. But from a Canadian movie perspective, a Canadian film, the nice thing is it's refreshing to see a movie filmed very well. You know, it's got some budget here, some modern filming techniques. I mean, the acting here is okay. I mean, it's not strong, but it's good. It's not terrible. It's not cringeworthy. But the action is a bit subpar, but I think it's a step in the right direction compared to other Canadian films we see. So that, with respect to that, I would recommend it as a very lukewarm, just above the bar recommend. But I would say it's a rare antiquity from a Canadian film perspective because it makes those leaps that need to be done from a technical standpoint. But from a story standpoint, it doesn't quite reach the bar. So again, even on the rare antiquity level, they can go on either side because in my opinion, it should have been stronger because he had all the tools here. He should have made a better movie. That's kind of where I go. So it's really hard for me to say because I really want to say it's a rare antiquity for, you know, film from Canada. It's just, if I have to classify it as rare antiquity to compare to any other film we do, whether it be a foreign film or a Hollywood film or any other kind of film, it's not a rare antiquity because it's just not strong enough. So you have to look at it from two different perspectives.
Right.
That's kind of where I fall.
Yeah, I hear where you're coming from there. You know, when you break the movie down into its component pieces, I think it's well acted. I mean, nobody's giving an award-winning performance here, but the performances work, the characters work. The chemistry between Patrick Ward and Colin Feore was good. Like those two guys worked well together. It's the story. I mean, the script is a mixed bag because the story itself, it has a lot wrong with it. I mean, the hockey stuff falls flat. The plot is very basic. There really aren't any surprises, not too much of interest here. So from a plot perspective, it's not great. From a dialogue perspective, from the bilingual perspective, I mean, all of that's great. I mean, and that there isn't, as far as I know, there isn't really another example of that. I believe they build this as a first film to be done this way, and then I read that isn't actually true. That has been done before, but great. I mean, that's definitely not an everyday thing. So that's where the strength of the writing comes through and the bilingual aspects of it. It's filmed fairly well. I mean, they tried to take Canadian cinema not just Canadian cinema, French Canadian cinema mainstream here, which is a very ballsy, ambitious prospect, and it misses a lot of the time, but I respect the fuck out of these guys for going for it. So yeah, it's tough to recommend this to just a general movie-going audience. I don't know that most people will get it or find it entertaining, but man, there's a lot about it that's really cool. And yeah, I am disappointed because when I saw this, I thought, okay, maybe they'll start making Canadian movies to kick some fucking ass now for a change. And they have not. There is a Bon Cop, Bad Cop 2.
I was going to ask, wasn't there a sequel?
Yeah, there is a sequel. Came out last year, 2017. I have not watched it yet.
Are you going to?
I am going to watch it, yeah.
Okay, that's good.
It's got the same guys in it. It's a different director, but it's got the same actors in it. So I'm going to check it out one of these days here. And I just wish that this had been built upon, that they could take, because it was successful in Quebec anyway. I mean, they made money in Quebec. That's where it was released. It was released limited in Canada and then not really too much internationally. But this is a film that I thought could make a decent foundation for larger Canadian cinema, and it didn't really happen. So it's a disappointment. But all that being said, if you're interested in that bilingual aspect, watch this movie, man. It's cool to see that. And as such, yeah, I think it's a rare antiquity. I mean, they don't do stuff like this, and because they execute on some of those interesting ideas very well, I think you gotta put it in that category. Overall, as a movie, does it hold up to some of our other rare antiquities? Yeah, like you said, not really, but it's certainly a curiosity that's worth a watch, and it's a watchable movie. It misses as much as it hits, probably. So anyway, so that's Bon Cop, Bad Cop. Harry, thanks for doing this with me. As always, I wait with bated breath as to what you have in store for us next time.
In 1975, James Bond and Batman's butler went on an adventure in the Middle East to rule a land, as we will see Sean Connery and Michael Caine in John Huston's The Man Who Would Be King.
Oh, shit. So you're telling me that Sean Connery and who was it?
Michael Caine.
Michael Caine are in a John Huston movie?
Yeah, the man who would be king.
Oh man, I'm excited already.
Yeah, I have never watched it. It's been on my radar for a very long time, and just life gets in the way and other interests, and I just have to be in the mood to watch a movie like that. I don't know how much of a comedy or a romp or a drama. I'll lean towards it's drama, I believe.
Well, John Huston's not exactly known for his lighthearted romps, dude. So
yeah, I know. So that's where I'm coming from, and that's why I thought it'd be very interesting. We haven't covered John Huston yet, I believe, so I thought this would be a good pick.
Yeah, awesome. No, there's going to be lots to talk about there. That's for sure. There's tons of layers already. Fucking haven't even heard of it before.
Do you expect me to talk? I expect you to talk. All right. Anyways.
No, I expect you to die, please. I expect you to hang up now.
Yes. All right. Sounds good. I'll talk to you later.
All right, man. That was fun. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. Cheers.
All right. Bye.